This week on Unapologetic Uplift.
I would say this. I would say no woman travels unafraid. Just think about how you have to exist daily in your country, in your city, all of the million and one mental hoops we have to run through just to stay safe in this world, right?
Madam Z has an energy that attracts the highest level human beings who also have a true need for healing that only he can deliver, that she sees in a clarity that is not a typical modality, but something that comes from her soul that's deep because of generations of women that you come through.
I'm AuDHD, autistic with ADHD, and I struggled so much my entire life and had no idea why, right? But in that moment, I felt it's going to sound woo, it's going to woo. I felt like 1,000 me's from different dimensions that were more powerful come into my body in that moment. I work with the most accomplished, complex women in the world, women for whom the world was never built at their full scale, right? Their depth, their range, their intersections. They've built this remarkable life. They built this remarkable life. And unfortunately, they have this persistent, unnamed ache. And it's like this constant ache. But they would never admit it because people would say they're ungrateful because they've had this extraordinary life. Everything on the outside looks extraordinary, but yet they have this ache.
Welcome to Unapologetic Uplift. I am your host, Ianthe Morrow, here with my amazing, beautiful co-host, Kim Staples. And we get to introduce you to a personal friend of mine, someone I am so, so grateful that we get to share this time with my dear, dear friend, and we get to share her with the world, with you, Madam Z. I just have to tell you all that Madam Z and I are friends the way that Kim and I became friends online. We were friends first online. We have yet to meet in person. And I'm saying this out loud because I feel called to let you all know to be my accountability partners. Because as I am saying this, I am telling you, I am hugging you, Madam Z. We are finding a time to get together physically. This will happen. I cannot wait to be in your physical space, although we get to be in space like this energetically whenever we want. And something you mentioned before I hand the mic to you, that you mentioned just before we went live with this podcast, is that we have had time. I think we met in 2021, and we had time and space where on a calendar, we weren't in connection. We weren't speaking or we hadn't connected. But you said you felt always, always connected to me. That's how I feel about you. So I'm so grateful that we get to be together now. And I can't wait for you to share what is you're doing in the world right now and where you are in the world, because there's a story to that. Take it away. It's mic is yours, Madam Z.
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful, touching introduction. I like that. That's different. It's very warm. It's very you. So here I am. I'm just like, I'm here to share. I'm here to connect with you. It's my first time meeting Kim. She seems like a ray of sunshine and joy. I just, and the name Unapologetic Uplift, I was like, I'm so there. 'Cause I'm very selective about where I show up, who I'm with and how I'm sharing a message. And this was it's perfect. So thank you very much, ladies.
Well, yeah, I'm honored, and I know that you are selective, and that's part of who you are. I feel like you have, so no one in our audience probably knows of you yet. And so I will tell you this about Madam Z, everyone. Madam Z has an energy that attracts the highest level human beings who also have a true need for healing that only he can deliver, that she sees in a clarity that is not a typical modality, but something that comes from her soul that's deep because of generations of women that you come through. You come through a line, and I've never met someone who's more connected to their ancestral line than you. It's something that you immediately brought into the room when I first met you. you wear your ancestral line. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So I come from a lineage of women, powerful, wise women, and conjurers. And part of my lineage on one side of my parentage started with the Akan people empire in the 1700s in West Africa, through the Middle Passage, across the Atlantic, and then came in where my family then even multiplied more in South America and the Caribbean. And just, oh my gosh, I feel like how many minutes are we in? And I feel like I'll emotional, like I'm gonna cry.
Right, let's go. Yeah.
And I was just, uh, I was just there on the land. 3 years ago, I went to South America and the Caribbean. I met over 100 relatives I hadn't met before. I got to touch the land where my father was born and grew up. I saw the house, I saw everything. I, okay, I'm going to take a little detour. So it's almost like everything in my life in that moment, then everything in my life in that moment just came together, and I could feel the power of that lineage even further. Here's the thing though, when I was a child, because you talked about me having this connection, this spiritual connection, like when I was a child, I've never said this before openly on a public platform, but I'm going to say it now because I feel it's important. It's unapologetic uplift. Hello. So when I was a child, I used to see things. I don't know if there were spirits. I don't know. So when family members or different people were sleeping, like I would see them walking around. I would see them walking almost as if their souls or spirits would be walking around. And I just thought it was normal. To me, it was normal. I've always been able to sense things, feel things. I meet someone and something says to me, a voice says to me, like this is a person you can trust or not. There was a scary time in Rome when I didn't want to have this energy, this connection, because I was in a bookstore. And I think I want to share this because I feel it's very important. A lot of us as women and as girls, we're so disconnected from our power. Like when I started to talk about these things, I was raised very religiously oppressed. Okay. And so I felt sharing that even as a child. I knew if I shared it, it's like, oh my gosh, that's the devil. It's evil, right? And it was not evil. It was something that is protecting me. It was a gift that I knew I was here to share. And so I'm gonna say this. And a lot of my friends talk about my life being like a bingeable TV series. It's because the wildest things happened to me, right? But I was there in the bookstore. And you know how you have a bin. This is in Rome, by the way. I was living in Rome at the time. And I reached into the bin to pick up this book, and another person touched the book at the same time. And my hair, not this hair, but because my hair is already big, but my hair on my body stood on end. And I was like, I looked up into the person's eyes. We were touching the book at the same time. I looked up into their eyes and I had like full body chills and fear. And I saw that this person had harmed women. I'm going to leave it like that. I'm not going to say further. It's worse than that. And I didn't even know what it was. And I wasn't like fully cognizant. It's like the unconscious competent kind of thing. And I hightailed it out of there. I was shaking. And I really feel women, this is like I work in 5 territories when I work with women. And this is a very important one when you talk about your lineage, and everybody has one, even if you don't know what it is. A lot of times just doing what I call disruptive inquiry, that's one of my gifts. I ask questions intuitively, instinctually, that quantum leap people, I've had clients tell me, oh my gosh, I've been in therapy for 5 or 10 years. And you asked me this one question and I quantum leaped and like it's gone. So it's funny because for years I tried to box it, package it. I was doing all the mainstream coaching programs and no one could really hold me contained. No one could help me develop what I was here to do. They always tried to box it into something, right? So I really want, especially women listening today to, especially if they felt like an alien, never fit in, listen to that. Listen, you start exploring why. Find someone to speak with that can expand with you, that can express you, that can excavate what I call the hidden, forbidden, unlived iconic selves. That's the territory I go into with a woman. And earlier, I was sharing with Kim that all this time, for decades, I went undiagnosed. I'm AuDHD, autistic with ADHD. And I struggled so much my entire life and had no idea why, right? And just a few years ago, when Ianthe and I had our physical pause, that's what I was going through these last years. So, yeah, so that was a lot. I feel like I was talking a lot, but
so much there. Oh my gosh, full body goosebumps. And I can totally feel you. I often call myself an alien, actually, because I have never fit in. And I've also tried to fit myself into these boxes my whole entire life that it's just impossible to fit inside of. I've done a lot of masking. And as I was saying before we jumped on, I wonder if I am also AuDHD. And I've had so many struggles throughout my life growing up, and nobody has ever been able to understand me. Like still nobody understands me. So as you're saying this, I'm like, oh, I need to continue this conversation with you outside of the podcast. But just so relatable, and I can just feel you.
I want to say that I had this massive yelling and like just huge voice that said, I understand you. And I feel understood by both of you. And I feel that I understand both of you. So if this can give anyone hope, if you're one of those women and girls that Madam Z was just speaking to, if you're one of them that you feel like you're an alien, you don't know who could possibly understand you. You barely understand yourself some days. Maybe you don't understand yourself at all some days. I want you to find people like Kim, like Madam Z, like me to have in your life, because you absolutely can find people who will understand you, and you don't deserve to be completely misunderstood. Although it is a massive, I think it's a beautiful sign of truly living in an authentic life when you are misunderstood. So it's actually a good sign. It's a green flag in my mind, even though I know it can be painful to be misunderstood. So I want to circle back to a couple of things. One thing I do on this podcast, always my role here is to make sure that terms are defined. So if anyone listening hears something that goes by, I try to grab it if I think it's something people need to know. So I'm going to ask you, you use the word conjurer. And I would love to know what that means for people listening, what you mean when you say conjurer.
okay. So there's always a textbook meaning for everything. There's Merriam-Webster,
Don't care.
exactly, right? Like for me, it's the lineage of women that I come from. When I talk about conjurers, they created entire worlds inside the world that was not meant for them, that they weren't meant to exist in, that was meant to contain them, right? I work with the most accomplished, complex women in the world, women for whom the world was never built at their full scale, right? Their depth, their range, their intersections. They've built this remarkable life. They built this remarkable life. And unfortunately, they have this persistent, unnamed ache. And it's like this constant ache. But they would never admit it because people would say they're ungrateful because they've had this extraordinary life. Everything on the outside looks extraordinary, but yet they have this ache. And so my ability to conjure, to create, to craft a world, to bring out like the hidden, the forbidden, those unlived iconic selves that they don't even know exist, and then custom code a world around them, right? For me, that is conjuring. That is creating something with what you have, creating something from even the yous that exist in other parallel universes. Like I pull on that energy for myself. And that's something that I wanted to circle back to that I was talking about before, but my ADHD brain, it goes all over the place. When I was in my early 20s, I was in a toxic relationship. I had great parents. I was in a religious jail, I feel like, I had a lot of sexual shame, sensual shame. I felt so like this oppression on me, right? And as many women have, right? Just being a woman existing in this world, it's damn difficult. The conditioning that we have. And one time there was this straw, the final straw. And I had no idea that at that time, like I said, unconscious competent, I had no idea that this is the power I was drawing on my lineage, on the ability to conjure, on the magic in my bloodline. At that moment, a voice came through me and said, tell this person, I'm not going to go through everything that happened. Doesn't matter. They cheated. There was some other woman there, an ex. And at that point, I said, you just lost the best person that you were ever going to meet your entire life. Like you have no idea what you did. I don't know where that came from, but I said it. Turns out later, that's exactly what happened because they circled back, but that's neither here nor there. But in that moment, I felt, it's going to sound, woo, it's going to woo. I felt like 1,000 me's from different dimensions that were more powerful come into my body in that moment. And I said that to that person and I walked away. And I went on a mancation for 2 years, and I was back in my studies. I won a scholarship, a couple of scholarships to travel and study abroad. And that started my love affair with myself, with my life, with my being. Like the first time I was in Rome, I literally shed like my lifetime up until then. So I guess a couple of decades of shame, of sexual shame, of religious like oppression, on my body shame. Because every time that I would be with someone intimately, like I had these nagging thoughts and it felt beautiful but I couldn't connect in that moment. But here's what happened when I was in Rome. So I had won this scholarship and I half scholarship funded half of it. The other half I'd worked for and paid. And I had a 17 country Euro pass. I had months, more months to be in across Europe. I had one month. I was supposed to study culture and Italian language in Florence, but I landed in Amsterdam. When in Amsterdam, I was all over Belgium. I went to Paris and I went down. I had some really lovely transformations spiritually in Paris, but that's not this story. I studied in Florence for the month. So much happened there. We have to do like 10 podcasts, ladies, because anyway.
Yes, the Florence
for it.
chapter, the Rome chapter.
Can I come every week?
Yeah.
Then I landed in Rome. So picture this. I'm in Rome. I'm a student. I was on the Spanish Steps. Two guys come up to me, one tall blonde guy, one tall dark handsome guy, start speaking. And mind you, at that time, I was speaking French and English. So I'm trying to speak in the other Romance language I know. I barely started studying Italian, so really couldn't say much, but I kind of, and, he invited me for some ice cream. So he went and had ice cream. We went to the Trevi Fountain one day and I threw the coin over my shoulder as they do, in 1950s movies. I wanted to dive in and do all that. Like Anita Ekberg, but no, I would have been arrested. And so I had such visceral, sensual awakening. My body was alive. I can't even begin to tell you. Hopefully I'm transmitting it to you. Like oh my goodness. Of course, the friend, he left, and it was just us. I had 8 days left in Rome. I was supposed to then go to Switzerland, Germany, and Austria after that. I didn't make it. I was in Rome for 8 days, and then it turned into another week and another week. I had 3 weeks left. And then I was supposed to go back to the US because I needed to go graduate, get my degree. And I felt so seen. I felt my body was worshiped. Okay. I felt like I could be all of me. I didn't feel any shame. I didn't feel any repression at that time. He created, okay. And here's the juxtaposition of that person I was dating before, the toxic kind of person I was dating before that was like emotionally abusive, and this, like, and that 2 years I took to really step in, become myself, travel, like, and I turned all that into Before She Lands, which is some work I do with women who are traveling or moving abroad. That's a whole other story. But in that moment, I felt, I'm like, that moment when I said no more, and the 1,000 goddess level me's that came from the other universes into me, it was like a full circle moment. The midnight strolls at the Circus Maximus, I met, what do you call them? And oh gosh, that I'm trying to make the name of the ruins, people who excavate. Archaeologists, hello.
Archaeologists? Oh,
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, hello. Like, okay, ADHD, go. My ADHD is ADHD. The archaeologist, I met an archaeologist friend of his. I was able to go inside the Roman ruins, the digs where no other people go. Things were just opened up to me. One evening, he made me a pasta at his house. He had a gorgeous, big, flat, gorgeous house, nice veranda and everything. He made this pasta, ladies. He put the pasta sauce in a heart shape.
oh.
Right? And a heart shape. And yeah. So anyway, Massimo, if you're watching this, I know you're not, but thank you for that moment. That was my sensual awakening. Like, so much more happened. It was just a miraculous time. It was, yeah. It was the start of how I move when I move abroad, right? And on the way home, I had to go to Milan because that was my flight out. And on Milan, there was this gorgeous guy sitting in front of me. But anyway, I was like staring at the back of his head, and I was bawling. And the person next to me was like, "What is wrong with this woman?" I was like, I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave. I'm supposed to be there. I'm supposed to be there. And later on I was. That's another part of it. We could talk about that. But I went home to graduate, just finish my studies and graduate and everything like that. But oh my gosh, that was the start of a lifelong love affair with myself, with my in territories that I work with to pull out, and I do with other women. That was like a main catalyst for me.
I feel like I'm there with you. This is so much fun. We're traveling with you. And Kim, do you want to say anything before
I'm just reflecting on how the love affair with yourself is so, it sounds cliche to say you have to love yourself the way you want to be loved, but it's just that it's so true. We set the standard.
Yeah. And the result is what you're all witnessing here, watching Madam Z share this and seeing the light and the enthusiasm, the inspiration that is bubbling up as she's just sharing the story and let alone what it was like to actually live it. So I hope this is encouraging everyone to travel, for one. And that actually brings me to a question I have for you. I know that you've lived in 8 countries. I know you've visited many more than that. What if someone's listening, and let's say there's someone listening right now that has really never traveled? They don't know what that's like. They're afraid, maybe it feels like too much. Maybe now, because there's a lot going on in the world where it's like, I don't know, it might just be too much. I don't think I can do it. Living in 8 countries, traveling as much as you have, and having this, and the ancestors and the goddesses flowing through you, what would you tell someone about travel?
Ooh, that is a delicious question. So, what would I tell someone about travel, especially the women listening? I'm woman centric, just so you know.
pretty much are unapologetically too.
Yeah, I'm
It just
unapologetically.
happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
everything male has been decentered in my life. Like I don't even talk about it because even talking about that centers that. So the worlds that I build, they're very much woman centric. Everything is centered around us. Because if you try to use the tools, and I'm going to get back to your question, don't wait. If you try to use the tools from what I call the old regime, or also known as the patriarchy, I call it the old regime, you're building inside that. I'm a world crafter. I'm the world crafter. That's what I do with women. And so what would I say to her?
For the woman that feels afraid to travel, who doesn't think of herself as someone who can travel, and hearing your story, maybe she's feeling encouraged, but what would you say about travel to that woman who's feeling fear around it?
I would say this. I would say no woman travels unafraid. Just think about how you have to exist daily in your country, in your city, all of the 1,000,001 mental hoops we have to run through just to stay safe in this world, right? If you think about that, let's just be, cold logic. I don't watch the news. I stay abreast of things globally from different countries. I get my news internationally, right? I see there's a lot of things that are happening in the world that it can seem scary. But here's what I would say to her. For me, the fear of not living my most forbidden, hidden desires, staying in one corner of this beautiful planet, fear of not, because if I had stayed in the country and that's it, or, maybe took a couple of cruises, I wouldn't be the person sitting here in front of you that I am today. Spending the last 25 years living in 8 countries, learning different languages with people I actually want to cry for someone who does not get to experience that, to leave. I would rather, I want her to imagine the end of your life. Like you say, Kim, these things are so corny and cheesy, but it's true. You get to the end and you were afraid to do all these things. And you're looking at other people who have lived that regret. I regret that moment more than any fear. There's nothing I can't do. There's nothing I won't do. Well, I'm a little afraid of heights. I think the only thing I won't do is jump out of a plane, and I don't care what anybody says. I'm not doing it.
Same with you on. I always say I'm a land animal.
I'm not doing it, and I'm unapologetically saying I won't do it. However, I'm more afraid of what I didn't do and didn't become than going out. At a lot of times women come to me, I would love to, I want to move abroad, I want to do this, and I'm afraid. I'm like, it doesn't work out, and you move back. And what happened?
Yeah.
And I feel safer abroad. Feel safer abroad in these 8 countries I've lived in, dozens I've traveled to, than I do in the US. So, take that as you will, ladies.
Well, Kim's not from the US. She's Canadian. So go ahead, Kim.
I've never lived abroad, but I do travel a lot, and I have traveled alone. I've traveled to Indonesia by myself. And I honestly say traveling alone is what made me feel like a grown up. There's just the first time I traveled alone, I came back and I'm like, I feel like I'm grown up now. And I was in my 30s. So it's just, it opens you up to a whole new you, a whole new world. I can't imagine not traveling. And I also would love and often think about taking my kids and moving abroad, because we love to explore, just explore and explore. And actually this winter, we're planning on spending a month or 2 in Mexico. But my creativity, if I am feeling, I was just talking about this the other day with you, Ianthe, I can't remember where we were, what we were doing, but if I feel stagnant, if I feel creatively blocked, I could just go on a vacation somewhere, anywhere, go travel somewhere, and it opens everything up. And creativity just starts flowing, and it's just full of possibility.
Yeah. And I think like for me, I've never told this story before, but I was that girl. So you were speaking to me, Zahara, back in my early childhood. I was so afraid. I was so afraid to travel. I had a real fear. I lived with a lot of anxiety around losing people that I loved and needed and depended on. And the way that manifested for me is that I didn't want to travel because I was just afraid of being away from anything, from people that I recognized. So when I started traveling, the first time I really traveled, I started big. I went to all the way across the globe to Australia and New Zealand when I was 18 years old. And I was so terrified when I got to New Zealand, and New Zealand has islands. And so we all know, right? And one of them, you can go from one island to the other and you're in a completely different world. And one of the islands that has the glaciers, it meant my fear of travel all of a sudden was bubbling up as I was just walking in what would have been a normal hike. And there were people in their 70s and 80s walking by me. And I all of a sudden got paralyzed. I could not take another step because I thought I was going to fall, but it wasn't even that steep. And I realized in that moment the amount of fear that I'd been living with. And I asked it to go away. And I said, what are you doing? Why? I couldn't believe it. And I was really crying, and I just hiked, and then I walked down and I'm telling you, it wasn't steep, but in my mind, it was this most steep, terrifying. The point is, for those of you listening that are afraid to travel, I did it. And I never regretted that. I never regretted the people that I met, that I was meant to meet. I don't remember their names, but I remember how they made me feel. I don't regret seeing those islands, seeing more sheep than people, eating and tasting things I never had, smelling things you've never smelled before, feeling air and breathing air that's different. So all of it is, we live on this small planet, and there's so much to it. And the idea that, because I had this when I first went to Paris, I actually I felt like when I got there, I'd been there a million times. I knew I'd never been there. But when I got there, I started walking, and I was with, at the time, it was my first husband. And he's like, where are you going? I said, trust me. And I start walking. I was walking fast. I wasn't even looking at signs. I knew exactly where I was going. And I went right into a cheese shop, and I ordered, but it's that feeling. And I don't want, and regret, like you brought up, Madam Z, regret. I don't want anyone to live with shame, and I don't want anyone to live with regret.
I love that. Both of you mentioned Paris, and it's so interesting because Madam Z said that she had some spiritual growth, spiritual awakening. I can't remember exactly what you said, but something along those lines in Paris. And now you've mentioned being in Paris and knowing where you are. And I haven't been to Paris, but my 9-year-old daughter is insistent that I take her to Paris. And I've promised her that we will go on a trip to Paris, because she is constantly just saying, I want to go to Paris. I want to go to Paris. Mom, I need to go to Paris. I'm going to live in Paris. And she is highly intuitive. She sees things. So now I'm like, okay, I already said I would, but now we really need to go to Paris.
Go, Madam Z. I saw you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you saw me like jumping, like, okay, now here comes this story. When I was a child, when I was 8 years old, I told my parents, I said, I'm going to become a designer, because I started drawing and sketching since I was like 2 years old, could hold a crayon. I was designing bags, shoes, clothing, everything. I said, but when I was 8, I became obsessed with Paris, obsessed with French. I started watching this TV show. It's no longer on. It was like on PBS. And it was all about learning French and French culture. And it was set in Paris. And when I was 8, between 8 and 10, I was telling my parents constantly, when I grow up, I'm going to be a fashion designer and I'm moving to Paris. And I did both. I have lived in Paris, and I did become a fashion designer at that time. Not currently designing a lot now, but I did both. And I was around that same age.
Wow. And this is wild, because my daughter designs purses out of paper. And she's been doing this for years where she just cuts up paper, she puts beads, and like, girl makes the cutest purses out of paper. And yeah, and goosebumps when you're telling me that, because that reminds me so much of my daughter. And she just has, the first time she told me she had to go, wanted to go to Paris, I'm like, how do you even know what Paris is? Like, what do you mean you got to go to Paris? She's like, I need to live there. And anytime I'm like, vacation, you know, I said, you want to go to Disney? I want to go to Paris. I'm like, all right.
I know her daughter, Madame Z, and I'll tell you, she is extremely intuitive and in her power. That girl, she is. And I can't wait for her to go to Paris and find out what is there for her. Exciting.
Yeah, I mean, Paris is one of those places. I mean, when you talk to people, it's like they hate it, love it, or hate it. There's no, you can't be indifferent about Paris.
Yeah, they're not like, oh, Paris. I've never, you're right.
Yeah, you can't be, people are like, oh, I love it, I hate it. Like, you can't. The first time I was in Paris, my lifelong love affair with Paris, the first time I was in Paris, I went to, a couple of things. The very first time I went, I had a partial scholarship from my School of Design. And there, I don't know if they still have it today, but Air France had an international fashion design competition, and I went to represent my school. And it was held in the Louvre.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we were all there from all the, like 120 countries or more around the world. And the people I met, it was absolutely amazing. And after that, I came out of the Louvre and I was walking to the Jardin des Tuileries, or the Tuileries Garden. I was walking towards it and I just started crying. I was crying. I was bawling. People were like, ça va bien? They were like, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm okay. So funny. And I just had this knowing come over me, this like a full circle moment from when I was a child. And some other things shifted in me that moment. And you talk about your travels to New Zealand, right? And Australia, New Zealand. The people that you meet, do you all not know? Okay, so on that trip, I stayed, okay, I can't help it. I'm a posh lady, okay? I can camp if I need to, but it's more like glam. When I was a child, we did camping and things like that. And I can do it if I feel like it, but I need some comforts. So I went to my first time in Paris. I was staying in, I think, like the La République, so by that square. And I was in a hostel. And so the hostel was, I was like, I had no idea. I'd never been in a hostel. So I thought, I was looking around. I slept with my bag in one eye open because it was a co-ed room and it was like 6 or 8 beds. I don't remember. I was like, I cannot do this. So I blew a lot of I didn't care, a lot of my savings. I said, I need a 2-bedroom. I'm not a 2-bedroom, just max 2. And they were like, well, it's going to be a lot more. I was like, I don't care. And so I was upgraded in the hostel to this beautiful 2-bedroom. The first night I was there alone, and it had a balcony overlooking the square and a fountain, and it was just beautiful. And I was just like, the peasants in the other room. I felt like Marie Antoinette, right? The Marie Antoinette of students. And that's a whole other story because I did visit Versailles on another trip. When I was living there later.
We'll have to talk about Versailles because when I visited Versailles, wow, I had a experience.
Yeah. So my roommate that came in was from Southern California, and we met then. To this day, where she like kind of left my life, came in, you know how it is over the decades, and she's back in. And then she reached out to me and she's like, hey, I'm in Venice. I know you lived in Rome and you lived in Venice for a little bit. Since then, we met decades ago when we were both at university in that room, right? It's amazing, because how I feel is like your closest people aren't going to be near you. They might not even be in your continent. Look at us. We've got a North America sandwich. We've got Canada, US, Mexico. Like we're like stacked.
Love it.
And I have a ton of Canadian friends. I have a lot of Canadian clients as well. The Canadians love me and I love them. But yeah, that's what happened in Paris. And I remember one night with her and then a couple other women, well, girls, we called ourselves girls then, that we met. We were just sharing a glass of red wine and at this bistro, and they gave us a plate of apples with little sprinkles, candy sprinkles on it. And I felt, like you said, Kim, I felt so grown up. So I'm in Paris. I'm like the philosophers, and I'm here and I'm chatting. And it was the most amazing experience that first time that I was there. Oh, and one time we sat on the steps of Sacré-Cœur, the Silica. We were just like on that step, just a little bit of ways away. And we had stopped by the boulangerie. We got a baguette, cheese, and some things, and a little bottle of wine. And we sat there on this gorgeous day on the steps and just ate together. Just the memories, like no fear is great enough to stop me from having these experiences and helping women create those experiences abroad.
Which is what you do through the world, as your title, The World Crafter. And you have something else that before I get you to explain that, I want to just say, I had a quick thought. Somebody listening might need to hear this. Don't let other people's opinions about these countries affect you. I was told before I ever went to France that I would hate Paris. They would be mean to me in Paris. They wouldn't like me in Paris. I luckily was strong enough to not let that enter my brain when I arrived. And I want to tell you, my experience was the opposite. When I got off the plane and the first time since we got out of the taxi in the middle of Paris, a guy on a bicycle, you can't even write this stuff. This is in the movie, guys, and it happened. A guy on a bicycle rides up, stops the bicycle, hands me a baguette. It's like feeling like the key to the city. And my ex-husband looks at me and goes, "What are you doing? How are you charming Paris? Paris, everybody's supposed to hate us. What is happening? We're ugly Americans." And he hands me this, and I just said, "Merci beaucoup." And I had this baguette. So just be open to the possibility, people, that it's not what everyone says, and you get to have your own experience. And of all things, do not regret not taking these experiences. Okay, so back to you, Madam Z. You are the world crafter, lived in 8 countries, visited many, many, many more. How can people find you? How do people work with you? How do people, and actually, maybe I should go to that wonderful question that I said I wanted to. I really love this question, and I think it can encapsulate all. For the woman listening right now who feels that ache, who knows something is missing, but can't name it, what is the first thing she should know? And where does she go from here?
All right. So I want her to know that the ache is not the problem. It's just information. And it is her unlived selves telling her that they're ready. They're ready to erupt. They're ready to come out. They're ready for their grand entrance on the global stage. That's what that is. And it's the world that she was living in, this world that was made for her, that she doesn't fit in. That's the issue, not her. Because here's the thing. This is going to step on some toes, but I really don't care. We're unapologetically and uplifted here. So the reason why that unknown, that persistent ache, and nothing has resolved it, like religion told her she was flawed. Therapy told her she needed fixing, right? Coaching told her she needed optimizing. Those multiple retreats, because a lot of the ways that I've been on this retreat, I was in Bali, I was here. Those multiple retreats that promised you transformation, lasting transformation, they failed her. It's because the world that she's living in isn't hers. Methodologies work on the woman. I work on her world. So there's a difference with that. So when you adjust the woman to fit the world, right, you get incremental change. You get a little bit. That's what people come to me. 10 years of them. Like, what were you doing in therapy, for goodness sakes? I'm not downing therapy. I've been in therapy. We've all been in therapy. But this is deeper than therapy. There's things therapy and coaching can't touch. But when you build a world, finally, that fits the woman, right? She's in the center of the world and the world is crafted around her. Everything else organizes itself around that precision. So that is bespoke world crafting in a nutshell.
Kim, what do you want to say?
Yeah, that's something I'm just like, tell me more. Tell me more.
I know. Well, and I know we did leave. There was something that you did say, Kim, earlier, and then I switched because I was asking about the definition of conjurers. But I want to actually go back to before we leave together, before we leave this episode, because we will be back many, many, many times, and we will be together. You had said that you feel that maybe you have a diagnosis, maybe being on the spectrum or neurodivergence or ADHD.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to that and see so anyone listening, what do we do with that? What can be helpful for someone feeling that? How did you come to that, Madam Z? Because you said you went through something and then came to the diagnosis, and now you're having more understanding about yourself.
Yes, definitely. So after a lifetime of being undiagnosed and then 15 years being misdiagnosed and given different medication and things and trying to be in different coaching programs, just so much. I was in a luxury business mastermind. I'm obsessed with luxury and high level service and working with people who are affecting great change on the planet, like the women that I work with. So I was in this container and I was feeling depleted. Like we were on video and we were doing different things, and people in the container were drawn to me and they were coming to me. And I'm like, I'm not being paid to coach or to help people. Like it was interesting, right? I mean, this happens unfortunately and fortunately, I guess, everywhere I go. But I was just feeling drained by this. And then I was having different symptoms. Certain things just weren't clicking. Everything came to a head when one of the team coaches, I booked a session with her within this program. And I told her, I was like, I'm have this is what I'm feeling. And I need to stop. I need to take a break from this. I can't do it anymore. And mind you, she is a woman with 10 kids. She has 10 kids. Yeah. She has 10 kids and lives in the Middle East. She's in Saudi Arabia and has 10 kids. And she was a coach in the program. Brilliant woman. She said, you sound like 4 of my kids. I have 4 kids on the spectrum. I have 4 kids who are neurodivergent. Maybe you need to go just get tested, discover, explore, do whatever you need to do. And that's how it started with her. When I came to her, then pulling me aside saying, hey, you need to, but here's the issue. And a lot of the women that have come to me have then said, oh my gosh, I think I might be as well. Then we find out that they are. Like one woman I'm working with now at the Pentagon, she's, has discovered this about herself. And I'm working to help craft her world so then she can be even a greater leader that she is. And because it's extremely difficult when you're trying to exist in a world that is never going to fit you as a woman. And then you're a neurodivergent on top of that. You've got to and I don't like to say marginalize, but marginalize how some people say it, of these things going on, and some of us have more than that. So I started doing research. And this is one of the areas when I work with world crafting, it's one of the areas that I talk about. What are these quirks? What are these things? What are these other hidden forbidden selves and things that we need? And then how do we craft your world around that instead of you trying to exist in a world? So from then on, I looked into research that was done by women for women and girls, because most of that whole industry, it's not for us. It's based on male research. And I was actually talking to one of my clients who's a medical professional the other day, and she was like, it's abominable. It's shameful how the research is done. She said that women and girls were so complex. They said, well, let's just leave them out. We'll just do it on males and then push it out to everyone. So back in probably 2017, when circling back to what I was saying before about being woman-centric, I stopped reading books by males, by men, by guys. I don't listen to I'm even low-key, I'm allergic to their voices. Anyway, I stopped listening to them. I don't read the books. They're far and few in between now that I will listen to or something, but most I can't. I have this matriarchal vein that I can't deal with nonsense, right? It's only, anyway. So I found if they find me on social media, because I'm going to be talking about these things. I'm creating a very intimate Telegram space where I'm going to be sharing more of my stories, the codes, how I do world crafting. I'm going to be talking about neurodiversity because it kicked my ass these last 3 years since my diagnosis, but I had to recraft my world, my business, everything. And I feel like I've emerged, like the Phoenix. I'm like, I'm back and I'm on fire. And so I'm opulent solo traveler on Threads. And so I'm going to be opening that soon. And that's where they can come find me. I'm going to go deeper in these things. But you have to be very, very careful who you listen to. Look at the research under the research. There's different sites where it's like woman centric. We really have to be, you can't just listen to anyone. I've fought literally over the last 10 years prior, 10, 15 years prior. And the last straw was a male psychologist. He said, you're this. And I'm just like, look, I know myself. And I refused his diagnosis. So I'm not going to take another misdiagnosis. And he told me, he was like, I'm the professional and you're just fighting me. I can't help you. I'm like, you're right. You can't help me because you're not listening to me. Then I found a woman practitioner who listened to me. And she said, okay, I'm going to listen to you. And because she was so receptive of me, I was receptive of her. And we kind of did both of our things. And that's how I came this, right? So.
Yeah, all resonates so deeply. And that whole feeling drained is like this social battery that I has never been so sensitive. That's the big thing for me. And I have masked my whole life. And I didn't realize that was a huge thing for autistic women specifically. Because I'm thinking, like you said, of anytime you look up autism, it has everything about men, right? And it's socially awkward. But women may have lots of friendships because they're able to do the masking and mirror other people and act like them to fit in, which is what I did my whole life growing up. And have always felt like there's something wrong with me. I'm not like everybody. Like I said, I would call myself an alien. I am very much into self-discovery and self-development and have been like, okay, well, human design, for example, I'm a quad right. That's 1% of the population. I've kind of put myself in that. And I'm like, that's why I'm so different. But there's always more. There's always more. And the more that I am learning about how it presents in women, specifically the AuDHD, because I've known that I'm neurodivergent, not that I've ever been diagnosed, but this was just something I've known, but I have never been officially diagnosed and I don't know what the exact flavor is, right? But the more that I'm learning, I'm like, okay, maybe I should just go through with being assessed and getting a diagnosis. I'm sure it will help.
Yes, it's life-changing. It's life-changing once but there's mourning to it as well. It's life-changing and exciting because you finally know. And on the other side, you're mourning who you were or the things you thought you could do, right? But it's not something that needs to be prolonged. But, you get those pangs. I'm like, oh my gosh, I wasted decades trying to do something, trying to fit in a world when I should have crafted my world. But I didn't even have anyone here to do that. And that's why I'm here, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like that's what I have been doing for the past 6 years, is really creating this life for myself that is not putting myself in boxes. But the further I go down the rabbit hole, I'm like, there's still something that I'm struggling to understand about myself. And yeah, that's where I'm at right now, is I think that could be what it is. And I need to look further into that and explore that.
And I'm definitely leaving our audience wanting more. And I want you all to know, everyone, if you are ready for some disruptive inquiry and conjuring, you need to go to Opulent Solo Traveler. You need to be in this woman's realm. Madam Z, I never want to stop talking, but I am going to wrap up this episode because I do want to leave people wanting more. And I know they do right now. They don't want me to stop. Neither do I, but I'm putting a pin in it because I know we'll be able to come back. I think we should have a whole series with you. I think we could start a new little mini series. Right now we have 2 mini series going on, Madam Z. We have Sacredly Unhinged with Kim. It's like a 3 to 5 minute episode. And I have intentionally Ianthe, where I light a candle and I set an intention for everyone. So I feel like there's another mini episode in there that involves Madam Z in some way that's woman-centric and beautifully unapologetic. So I'm just saying that out loud because it feels right. I love and adore you both. And I am so grateful we got to spend this time together and you let us share you with our audience, Madam Z.
Yes, thank you.
Anything else you want to say before we close?
Ooh. One last thing I'll say is back to that ache. You know, if you're feeling that, there's some hidden, forbidden, unlived, iconic selves within you. There are lives you haven't lived, whole worlds that are waiting for you. Don't sit on that. Don't sit on that. You do not want to reach the end of your life and not having ignited what I call it on what I do, that no regrets, binge worthy era of your life, like rest of your life. That's what I feel that we're here to live. And most women, I would say 99.99%, unfortunately don't get to. And that's what I'm here to be the catalyst for.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you both. Thank you both.
Really quick, how do people what's the best way for people to find you? Through the Threads page?
Yeah, on Threads. That's the best way to find me right now because I'm only on Threads.